Hi, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to this talk, which is organized by Love Me Crazy, the Science Film Festival that we have here, organized by the Science Museum of the University of Navarra. My name is Bien Leon. I am very pleased to be the host of this session. I'm a professor of, associate professor of television production and science communication here at the university, the School of Communication. Tonight, we are going to have two very special guests. We are very pleased to have them here. We have Nicolas Brown, who is the director of the film we'll talk about, which is the Serengeti Rules. And we also have David Galicia, who is a biologist here at the school. So we are having a call from Pamplona, where David and myself are based now, to Oxford in England, where Nicolas is now. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll introduce you briefly later on, but for now, let me just start by saying that we're going to have this talk about the film, The Serengeti Rules, which is one of the films that is one of the finalist films here at this second edition of Love Me Crazy Science Film Festival. This year we had 1,120 films from 92 countries, a lot of films, and really good films. And this is, as I said, one of the finalists, The Serengeti Rules. It's a film which has been, summarized as a film about how life works. I think that's a good, probably a good summary. Maybe Nicolas will tell us later on if he agrees or not. But to me, it's quite a good point, because it explains well a side of how life works. The film is based on a book by Sean Carroll, and the film has achieved, I would say, the most important awards worldwide, 22 awards so far, in the most important festivals like Paris, Bristol, Jackson Hole, in the US, and everywhere else. So I think to start with, it would be a good idea to watch the trailer of the film. Can we watch it, please?
There's a sign when you get off the airplane there. Not the end of the world, but you can see it from here.
They said, "Can a birdman study buffalo?" I said, "Of course, I'll study anything."
I knew nothing about the ocean, and he said, "You'd be perfect for this."
I just had to be underwater for the rest of my life.
This remarkable band of scientists went out into the world and just followed their passion and their curiosity.
I've always said that science is detective work. But at the time we started, nobody knew anything at all.
Instead of one spider monkey in 10 years, I could see 10 spider monkeys in 10 minutes.
The wildebeest in their huge numbers were determining everything inside the park.
I was stunned. I had never seen anything like this before. Whether it was terrestrial or aquatic, whether it was Arctic or tropical, it was all working in the same way.
We've found the rules, how systems work, how the world works.
This was a major deal.
The clear message is that some animals are more important than others.
If you lose the wrong ones, if you lose the keystones, you're going to see very big changes.
What does this mean for you and me? It means we can use this knowledge to upgrade the places around us.
Nature could heal itself.
Okay, nice trailer for a nice film. Let me now introduce briefly to our guest, one of our guests, Nicolas Brown. Nicolas is indeed one of the leading documentary filmmakers in the world. He has more than 20 years of experience as a writer, director, and producer in what I would say is a really impressive filmmaking career. He has worked with the BBC, Of Defense, Oxford Scientific Films, and many other leading companies. Nicolas has won almost 100 awards all over the world, including 3 Emmy Awards, 2 BAFTA Awards. This film, The Serengeti Rules alone, has achieved 22 major awards, including those in the top festivals like Wildscreen, Jackson Hole, Paris, and many others. So I would say it's really amazing, number of awards and jobs he's done. His most recent work is a TV miniseries that was released in 2020, which is entitled H2O, the molecule that made us. Nicolas, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
First of all, before we go into the film, I do not resist to ask you a question about, I've read in your CV that you worked with David Attenborough. He's, I happened to meet him because I made my doctoral dissertation on his films. So I had the opportunity to meet him a few times, and he's, so I'd like to ask you, what is it like working with David Attenborough?
I remember the first day I worked with him. We were here in Oxford. We actually got our Land Rover stuck in the mud, and he had just come from the Galapagos. And I remember he was sort of anxious about like getting the Land Rover unstuck and out of the mud. And he said to me, he said, "Nick, my dear boy, it so happens to be my 80th birthday, and I'm needed in London tonight." And I just couldn't believe that on his 80th birthday, he was stuck in the mud with me up here in Oxford.
Yeah.
I think, he knew I was nervous working with him. And one of the first things he said to me is he put his hand on my shoulder and says, I'm here for you, which, you don't get that from any other personality. He's so confident in who he is and such a generous person and so genuinely cares about the world. And that project was about climate change, which was I think it was a big turning point for both of us back in 2007, 2008, when we were sort of just realizing how serious climate change was. And I think he's really, he's now over 90 and still fighting the good fight every day. So he's an amazing person.
Great. We also have tonight here with us David Galicia. David is a biologist, works for the Department of Environmental Biology here at the University of Navarra. He's an expert in small mammals. He has researched small mammals for over 20 years. Also, more recently, has done research about analysis of biodiversity data. He has published a lot in these fields, more than 30 articles and 9 books or chapters. And he also is very interested in, devoted to science communication because he's responsible for the conservation. He belongs to the board of the Science Museum of the university. Mm-hmm. And he's responsible for the conservation of these, the extensive collection of the museum. So it's great to have you here, David. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
Okay, so we have also some, planning a 30 or 40 minutes talk. We'll be welcoming questions from the audience, so please feel free to ask your questions through the chat. Okay, to start with, Nicolas, as we mentioned before, the film is based on this book of the same title by Sean Carroll. How did you get to know the book? And did you know this book had the potential for such a successful film?
Well, I was sent an advance copy of the book and asked if we thought it could make a film. And our answer initially was, no, it's impossible. The book is actually much more expansive, far-ranging. It takes you to the trenches in World War I. It takes you to the French resistance in World War II. It takes you to the fields of molecular biology, and it's looking for these patterns in science. And it was clear to us that most, especially in the feature film market, the films that tend to do well are those that stick to very few characters, or usually just one character, like biographies about someone like Muhammad Ali or something. And to have documentaries that are so wide-ranging and cover so much science, it's kind of impossible. But we then kind of, I suppose what happened is, as we were working with, like looking deeper into the book, we came across a science paper that was part of the book, mentioned in the book, and it was called Trophic Downgrading of Planet Earth, which we never used the terms trophic downgrading in the film because it's jargon, it's very specific ecological speak. But what was great about the paper is it had photographs. It had sort of before and after photographs, which you see in the film. And visually, those photographs sort of tell a story. And that, I think, was when we first started to see that there could be a film here, is when you realize that nature can exist in sort of upgraded, high biodiversity, highly biodiverse states, or it can also be downgraded into states that are much lower biodiversity and more impoverished biologically. And understanding how that happens was kind of a great mystery to uncover. So that's when we started to decide that we could make a film.
Okay, David, as you know, because you've obviously watched the film focuses on this concept of keystone species. A concept that was originally developed by Bob Payne and a small group of researchers, as the film says, and the film explains. I can imagine that this concept is something is explained at the schools of biology. Is that so?
Well, it's a very interesting concept. Thinking about that the whole community or the whole ecosystem is based on the role of few characters, and then those characters are keystones for the entire ecosystem. Of course, that idea is presented for the students, but also is very because there are some specific examples in which keystone species have been found, but it's difficult to generalize. And this film, I think, this is about this. It's about the how the same concept that Bob defines in the middle of the 20th century later is being expanded to very different ecosystems, very different species. So I think that it talks about the complexity of the natural systems.
Do you think Bob Payne and the other scientists that appear in the film, do you think they are well known within the scientific community?
I don't think so. At least, well, the ecology is a very broad field. So even I've been reading several publications about the ecology of small mammals. Maybe you never found a publication or you are not paying attention to what is happening in the north of the Pacific with the sea otters, and so it's very funny and very delightful when you find this kind of connections that travel in different fields of the same area of research. But of course, there are people very that have published a lot of papers. But I think that to attain a place in the field is very difficult. Maybe this kind of product, this kind of films, aid in this way, even to people that is professional like me. I mean,
Mhm. So maybe since it's a broad, ecology is a broad field, you only know probably the ones that are specifically working on your own niche.
you're usually are very focused on your research. Is maybe for a university professor, you are you have to sometimes look out of your field to know what is new in the area.
Yeah.
But I think that for people that are very very specific on their field, then that they are very not very professionals, but very professionalized in an area. It's easy to lose the view of some other things that are being published.
Okay, Nicolas, let's talk a little bit about the beginning to begin with, about the script that you wrote yourself, the script for the film. In some way, the script is like developed like a mystery, okay, like a mystery novel or like a mystery piece. Was that your idea when you developed the script?
I wouldn't say it was, to be honest. I think what we were most concerned about was sort of tracking people, and what was challenging. I think this is just a challenge in the way that science works, is that it's very unusual, especially in a field that's so complicated. Like ecology really is one of the most complicated subjects in science, or any subject. I mean, it makes, I think ecology in its complexity makes physics look very simple by comparison. I'll get a lot of flack for that, but I mean, when you think about the complexity of ecological systems, they're very difficult to study, because there are so many interactions in between all the players. So I think, therefore, it's difficult for any one person to come up with a grand theory. And so what we found was that it was a mystery in some respects, but it was also people handing off one bit of knowledge and then sort of the knowledge stopping there. So, for example, there's a point in the film where the idea that's expressed that predators play this incredible role in ecological systems, it was sort of proven in aquatic systems, but there was this question of, well, does it apply on land? And no one knew the answer. And so it took another scientist, it took John Terborg, to sort of pick up that thread and kind of go, well, how can I test this? How can I prove this? You can theorize it all you want, but you need some measurable data. And that's what John went out, sought, and found and discovered was, yes, this applies on land as well as in the water. And so I think that what was sort of, for me, character leading to character actually developed into solving a mystery. I'm pleased, of course, with that analogy, because I do think that analogy is very much how it must be for a scientist. You are uncovering a mystery. You've got pieces that you need to solve. But what's remarkable about a mystery like this is it takes about 50 years for it to be solved. It's and that's just, hats off to people like David who work in the field of ecology, because I think biological sciences are just simply so complex, and our understanding of them is we're still in a very early stage in some respects of knowing what we need to know about planet Earth.
Yeah, we have the first question from the audience here, saying the film transmits passion for science. Do you think it can contribute to create new scientific vocations among young people?
Well, I mean, my favorite audience for the film have been young audiences, and what I've been most amazed by is that young audiences age 12 to 15 have no problem in understanding and picking up on the concepts very quickly, and then asking very insightful questions. And one of the things that it took me a long time to understand this idea of what we call the shifting baseline, which is, when you're a young person, you see the world and you think that that's how the world should be. And it becomes very hard to imagine the world being anything else. So for example, I don't know of good examples in Spain, but north of me in Scotland, we all think that Scotland is this treeless place that, this sort of heath that hasn't got a tree in sight and looks very barren and windswept. And I think 250 years ago, you would have gone to Scotland and you'd have seen a lot of dead old trees still standing, these kind of ghosts. And then if you went back 300 years ago, Scotland would have been this forest, this amazing forest. And it's due to the changes in the predators that inhabit that ecosystem that this long-term change has taken place. So I think that what's exciting to young people is to realize that, maybe the world isn't how it should be. Maybe there are other potentials out there. And I hope that people, I hope people do, I have had people say to me that, that idea, we do spend like the first 20 minutes of the film falling in love with nature. And I think that idea of people falling in love with nature, wondering how it could be, how it works. I think that's like, that's a major motivation for having made the film, I think, for us.
Yeah, I think this film, opposite to many other films that show mainly the results, the outcome of the scientific knowledge. In this case, you also show the human side of scientists, and also you show the process, the method that they use to find out what they found out, what they research. So I think that's, do you think, David, that's something important for a film, for scientific film, to show the human side and the process?
Yeah, of course. I think that is one of the part of the film that I love more. How the scientists that are presented. I think that also, I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but I think that they have very different motivations that finally end with a career on the natural science. For example, they are passionate from the beginning. Some of them, like John or Bob or Tony, I think. But for example, Jim I think that is presented as a person that has been sent to an island to study sea otters, and was not interested at all on doing this. But finally, at the end, he has an extended career with a very, very impressive research on a small part of the nature, but all the pieces together. I think that I don't know if the front of the film is a puzzle that I don't know how it's called, the portada of the film.
The portada.
Sí, el cartel.
Oh yeah, the poster. The
poster is a set of pieces of puzzle together. I think that is very, very good for the current use.
Yeah, talking about the human side that you show in the film, as we see in the film itself, Nicolas, you interviewed Bob Payne when he was seriously ill with cancer. I can imagine that was a really difficult experience for everybody in the team, right?
Well, I mean, literally, that was our first interview. That was the first, like when we developed the film and we decided we were going to make the film, we said, well, we must interview Bob Payne. At that point, there was no indication that he was ill. And then I think, we'd raised the money and we were getting going and we're making our plans. And we got this call saying, from his daughter saying that, I'm sorry, my father's really, really ill. And I think at that point, she actually had said to us, he's come down with cancer. It's terminal. And then, you know, that was devastating enough. And then like a few weeks later, she called again and said he probably won't live through the night. And at that point, we very seriously thought of like canceling the whole film, because we found it difficult to even know how we'd do it without Bob Payne. And then we got an email from Bob himself saying, no, you must come. You must still. And this is one of the things that really must be pointed out, I think, about people like Bob Payne who are in the sciences. It's not a job for them. It's a whole way of life. And I think that the question of passion, you know, it really goes, it speaks to the heart of the matter. When you have somebody who, in Bob's case, he was at such an advanced stage of cancer when we actually went to film him that he had about 20 minutes per day where he could actually be with somebody. And then the rest of the time he either had to sleep or was taking drugs to stay alive, or, you know, and so we were literally there with some of the last moments of his life. And Bob is one of the most famous teachers of science in America. So there was just, you know, tons of ex-students of his, some of whom are very, very famous scientists. There was Jane Lubchenco, who was the Obama's science advisor. There were many scientists there in the foyer. And yet Bob was, you know, determined that he gave us this time, you know, some of the last breaths of his life to give us this interview. Because I think for him, it was such a passion to teach and to get across this knowledge. And I think that, you know, for us, that was a tremendous earth-shattering moment for us making the film, because we suddenly had this last interview with Bob Payne. We only had, you know, I'd say about like 20 minutes or 30 minutes of film with him, but it was these precious words. And we felt a responsibility. And I you know, it's just that testament to the man and to the importance of the subject that they're willing to spend some of their last moments with the film crew. You know, not everyone would do that, but I think, you know, Bob did. And I think what he really wanted to impart something important because he really believed that it would make a difference. So, you know, I hope we did it justice, and I hope it does.
Yeah, that shows a lot about his personality indeed, yes. We have another question here from the audience. Okay, question for Nicolas. The film was released in 2018, yet Bob Payne passed on 2016. So production took quite some time. Is it common for science documentaries to take this long from inception to completion?
I'm afraid it is very common. I think, you know, I think what happens with films is that, yes, the production takes a long time, the editing takes a long time. And then there's also a long time in which you get your first festival submission. We went to Tribeca, and, you know, through word of mouth, it grew from going to Tribeca to other festivals. You know, eventually it made it onto television. Eventually we got an Emmy for the movie. But that whole process takes quite a long time for a film to reach audiences. And I wish there were a faster method, but it's good that people enjoy going to film festivals where science is a subject, because that's just literally how we started and how most people have been able to see the film. It has been on some television as well, and you know, it's been on the BBC and on PBS, but even to get those deals, we had to be first successful as a film and in film festivals.
Okay, we have another question here. He says, or she says, I love the photography of the film. Can you tell us a little bit about the production process? How long do you take to film this project?
Well, I mean, interestingly, one of the kind of, and here, the filmmaker secret behind this, like if you wanted to take something home for your waist pocket, if you're a filmmaker, was what we did is we use very different specialists. We had specialists who were working in wildlife filmmaking, And for example, like the shots of the otter underwater, those were probably the most expensive shots in the movie and took weeks to get. Very, very difficult. Even Jim Estes, who studied otters his whole life, has never seen one underwater. But getting those kind of shots takes a lot of time and patience and specialists. And so we were combining, I suppose, the field of wildlife filmmaking. And then our main director of photography, Tim Cragg, who I've worked with quite a bit, he specializes more in drama. And so we then used that language. And so the film actually is a mashup of several kind of languages of filmmaking. There's the language of drama, which also is it takes time to produce. You have to write scripts and then get actors and lighting and all the rest of it. So yeah, all of that was very planned and considered, but we were bringing together, expertise and styles from very different mediums of film. And I think, me in particular, I like to do that as much as I can, because I think that it always makes a film interesting when it has a few different styles and ways of accessing your emotions.
David, did you like the photography? Are there any particular sequences you like best?
Well, I think that all the scenes on the sea with the sea otters are really spectacular. But I love in general how well mixed are the original the original photographies, or with the part that has been filmed, I guess, with actors and characterization. I think it's very, very, very well prepared. You don't see the difference. I think that you think that those actors are really those scientists. That.
Also, we have a question here for you, David. The question is, it seems like due to the specialization of science, the possibility of creating very valuable collaborations between scientists working in different disciplines can be lost. What do you think? Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think it's true. You have to think in ecology or science as a very, very big field of work. If you want to research in one corner, the possibilities of talking with other one in other extreme of the field are very low. But there are fields that are by their nature invite to collaborate with other people. Ecology maybe is one of those fields. If you work on, for example, ecological networks, and you are not focused on one species or one taxon, if you are trying to discover the way of nature works, or how ecosystem at the high level, the functionality or the interaction between the network, maybe you are going to interact with other people, and probably your research has more impact because you are providing more general rules, more general information.
Okay, we're getting to the end of this session, but I'd like to comment briefly on, I think the film, one of the most important elements of the film is that it transmits a positive message that we still have time to help nature to recover. We have the knowledge, but what else do we need to do to help nature to recover? I think that's a question for both of you, Nicolas and David. We have the scientific knowledge, but okay, what else do we need to do? Maybe more films like this one?
I'll answer from the point of view of, I remember asking Bob Payne a similar question, and he was actually very cautious about it. He said that there have been many times where we tried to help nature and we messed up because we reintroduced the wrong species. You see this often in places like in New Zealand, where mammals were introduced weasels, stoats, and things like that, and then rabbits, and it was very damaging to the ecology of that system. So one must proceed with caution and with science always, but there is the opportunity to rewild everywhere. And I would say that Europe, for example, there have been some fantastic rewilding projects that are very successful, and North America obviously has some big wide open spaces to do the same projects on very big canvases, and the results are spectacular when they're done. Whether we're doing them fast enough and how climate change plays into it, I think it's a great field. And yeah, I'm sure David would agree.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the main problem is that the humans are a very disturbing player in the ecosystem. So all these recoveries that are documented usually start with a less pressure, a lesser pressure from the human, and giving the nature an opportunity to work by itself. So the solution, I don't know if is, I know that it's not easy, but one first step is to try to give a step back and give the opportunity of nature to work alone.
Okay, we have two more questions here. First one is, why most nature films seem to stay away from plots and numbers, which is how many scientists communicate their findings? Is this to improve traction among the general public?
So the question is
yeah, why don't you use numbers in films, or very specific scientific knowledge, but to try to communicate in a different way? Is that to make it more attractive for the public?
I don't know, because I think that in some cases numbers, how would you use numbers in the case of ecology? I think there's numbers, but there's also data, and what the data says. The numbers of predators, for example, are very low in comparison to the numbers of mesopredators who are below them, and then the numbers that of say plants. And then are those numbers that important for the audience to understand, or is it more important for us to understand the principles behind it? I suppose it's one of those kind of right brain, left brain questions. And I think for me, filmmaking is quite often works when it's trying to appeal to the holistic points that science can make, rather than necessarily breaking everything down into its constituent parts and understanding. We're trying to actually communicate the big picture, and hopefully that will lead to a breadcrumb trail of people. If people want to know more about the specific details of the numbers or the data, that they might go seeking it on their own. But first they have to understand the principle, which is, in this case, there's a small number of predators at the top that, or quite often predators, not always, that are responsible for how an ecosystem looks, and the removal of them will lead to a downgrading of that system.
One more question here, asking, how can the society help to make changes and help to protect and increase biodiversity? That's a quite broad question, but what would be your suggestion? Both maybe Nicolas and David?
Well, I think that I said before, we can expect that the ecosystems change their tendency of degradation if we continue making the same pressure. Of course, that the governments and have to rule this, have to manage this, but we also have the responsibility of try to not to ask too many to nature. I mean, to spend less, not in terms of money, but in terms of maybe make a more responsible use of our resources. Whatever that we have at hand. I mean, maybe small changes, but in a lot of people, finally, we can see a broad change in the level of the society.
Nicolas, you'd like to add something?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say that probably the fundamental change that needs to happen that I see, and this is the subject of some of my more current work as well, is we need to change how we feel about nature as individuals. We need to actually, I think, one of the points that's made in the film, and I would have loved to have time to ask David about his own origin story of how he fell in love with nature, because I think all of us have a moment in our lives where we connect. Some people, I've heard it described by some myth tellers that we all have a wild twin inside of us. Each one of us has inside of us a love for the wild and for nature. And I think we need to recognize the why we protect nature. And the more of us that do fall in love with nature, have experiences such as Mary Powers did when she first was swimming and saw the beauty of nature, I think that sort of connects you to a different set of values in your life. And around those values, then we will hopefully collectively put less pressure on nature and find more ways to preserve it, and then do the hard work that is the restoration and reintegration of different species. And ultimately, I think what John Terborg says at the very end of the film, we have a collective sense of tolerance for those creatures that we thought were bad, but wolves and things like that. Tolerance for nature being wild and living alongside that.
Okay, I think we have completed the time we had the schedule. It was a great chat. Thank you so much for making this possible. I think that the Serengeti Rules is not only an amazing piece of cinematography, but a really important film that can help many people to understand how the world works and how we can contribute to help nature recover. So, Nicolas, thank you for making this film, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And also, David, thank you very much. Good luck with your next project, research project, and also with the museum activity.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. Just a reminder, tomorrow at the same time, 7:30 p.m., we have on this very channel, YouTube channel, we have the award-winning ceremony of the festival, which is presented by something really unusual, the illusionist Numis the illusionist. So we'll make a very funny mix of award-winning ceremony within this, hosted by this illusionist, a great illusionist Numis. So I hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Muchas gracias.
Bye-bye.